What is going on, NPL fans? My name is NoPunIntended, and welcome to the first episode of the Pick'em Show for Season 8 of the National Pokeball League Majors, the show where we take you through all the matchups for the upcoming week in the NPL and decide who we think is going to win those games. If you guys enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a like or a comment on it. I'm sure I and the other big figureheads in the NPL would appreciate it. Unfortunately, I'm alone today in this procedure. My normal co-host, North Vader, didn't have much time available to record this week, but hopefully you guys enjoy my voice for the next 15 minutes alone. Now, I do have a bit of a bone to pick at the moment because Narth and I did actually record a Pick'ems video for week 1, and in the process of doing that, I had to coordinate a time to record and make my selections, and then come up with semi-reasonable explanations for those selections, then actually record the video, then modify my audio settings because the first time it sounded horrible, then record again, then do the graphics because no one else was around to make the templates, and then send everything I had made to the editors, and then I had to buy a week's worth of birthday cakes for our beloved Majors Commissioner Jolt of the Token Minorities. And even after all of that, the video still didn't get put up before the Majors coaches had already released their uploads for week 1. So, understandably, based on all this stuff that's been happening, I'm a bit miffed, but I still got a job to do, and hopefully my frustration doesn't distract from the video in any way, although it already probably has. Anywho, we're gonna cut to the results from week 1, even though we never actually uploaded this. As it turns out, the fans actually beat all of the analysts in predictions. The only team they ended up getting wrong was picking Greg and the LA Clefable over Blake and the Baltimore Braviaries. I guess this just shows that the fans really do know more than the analysts. Looks like these so-called experts have a bit of catching up to do. But if you want to vote as part of the fans, please make sure to join the NPL Fan Discord server. The link will be in the description below, and you can vote on which teams you think are going to take victories in future weeks of the National Pokeball League Majors. And the minors for that matter, but we haven't really uploaded a minors pick video in a while, so who knows what's going to happen with that. But with all of that having been said, let's get into our first game. The Sydney Sharpedos, coached by Gypsy King, against the Anaheim Altarias, coached by Ace of Base. Now, both these teams had pretty convincing wins in week 1. So, it's definitely, I think, going to be one of the highlights of the week 2 schedule. Now, I love Ace's playstyle. I've seen it in both minors for last season and in his opener against Trev. It is so difficult to prep against Ace's offensive cores because he doesn't ever give you a break. You have to have an incredibly solid defensive core in order to deal with the amount of things he can throw at you. So solid that it's still fossilized in the earth decades later. That being said though, Gypsy is a relic of the NPL, and his defensive cores are about as historically solid as I've ever seen. I think Mandibuzz especially will be crucial in Gypsy's game plan. If there's a Mon out there that can repeatedly stomach pressure from Mons like Mega Gallade and take advantage of foul play in case it sets up, it's Mandibuzz. Having that reliable recovery helps especially against Ace's kind of offensive team. While Fundy Eye I think will be difficult for Gypsy to get around, I think he has enough options where he can take advantage of its frailty. I picked Gypsy, but again, I think this game will be very close and one of the best played games of the season, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out. The second game we're going to be talking about is the battle between the FC Poplio, coached by David, taking on Rob Jr. and his Gotham City Goworks. Now, David's performance last week was definitely disappointing. He mentioned in his draft analysis that his team was a mix of a few different playstyles, but last week Aster played around his team better than David played with it. It just seemed way clunkier than I had anticipated prior to week 1. Couple that with the fact he's taking on Rob, who had one of the best performances in the first week of games, and this definitely seems like a mismatch. Skarmory is going to be especially important for David in this matchup, as it's his best switch-in for Rob's Excadrill, Weavile, and Dusk Lycanroc. But I don't think relying on Skarmory to check half of his offensive threats is a great idea, as Skarm doesn't give David much momentum, and if Rob uses a lot of physical setup, I think Skarm will break down. And once that happens, the Poplio's defensive checks look that much worse by comparison. Couple that with the fact that Magic's breakers like Terrakion don't match up well with Rob's Tangrowth Slowbro regen core, and I think Rob is going to take the victory easily here. Anyway, moving on to our next game, we have the Phoenix Sunkern, coached by Cheese, taking on Adam's Houston Soul Rockets, and I made this pick for one key reason. I don't know if Cheese has great answers for a fast offensive team like the one Adam can potentially construct. First off, Mega Lopunny feasts in this game. Very few of Cheese's Mons can survive 2 hits from the bunny, and it has enough in its move pool where I think Adam can be very creative with it. But on top of that, Cheese's speed is very dependent on Hawlucha and Sandra Stoutland, to which the Soul Rockets have the means to stall them out with a combination of Hippowdon and Toxapex. If Cheese can't break those two, then he doesn't have much to outspeed the combination of Mega Lopunny and Blacephalon and Superior, which means he's forced to run Scarfs in some of his threats. but relying on Choice Scarfs is quite risky for Cheese, as that makes it easier for Hippo and Pex to find opportunities to recover on them. I do find it kind of funny that I'm alone in this pick, as all the other analysts who submitted picks for Week 2 favored the Phoenix Sunkern, but I'm sticking with my gut here and taking the Soul Rockets to beat them. Moving on to the San Francisco Reggie Giants against the Baltimore Braviaries. Both Merc and Blake pulled off pretty nice victories last week. This battle I think is going to be close. There are going to be very few misplays on both sides, but ultimately, I feel like a setup-dependent team like Blake's has a good matchup against Merc's more stally defensive core of Mons like Alamomola and Umbreon. I don't think those two have good team matchups against setup Mons in general, and because of that, Merc will fall behind early. Now, the one mod I think he can lean on in this battle, that being Merc, is Kartana, which not a lot on Blake's team wants to take a Leaf Blade, but I think that Blake does have some answers for it. Perhaps Mega Pidgeot can revenge it. Quillfish is a decent switch-in. However, that doesn't stop me from being enthusiastic about the Braviaries' chances in Week 2. Anyway, game number 5 is a battle between Danza's Los Angeles Nidokings and Daniki's Cincinnati Slifer Reds. My take on this game? We saw last week the Slifer Reds really had to pray to the Hax Gods in order to outlive the Soul Rockets offense. But if you thought that was really scary to play against, now this week Dan has to prep for Landorus I, who outspeeds everything on his roster except for Frostlass and Rabombi, neither of whom can switch in on Lando, despite Frostlass's access to Ice Stab and Rabombi's ground resistance. That mon is going to suck up so much of Dan's attention, but he also has to deal with Cobalion, who outspeeds everything except those two, and Torn T, who outspeeds everything except those two, and Victini, who outspeeds everything except those two, although it does speed tie with Manaphy, but that matchup is still a 50-50. You're starting to see a pattern here. In this case, I do give the advantage to Danza. His offense is so difficult for Dan's team to handle, and the Slifer Reds have to step in turns, setting up in order to get the power that the Nidokings have much easier access to. But that's enough about that game. Moving on to the Newcastle Umbreon, coached by Aberforth, against the Montreal Hapsals, coached by Aster J. And there's a few mons on each team I can see performing well. For Aster, I think a physical Tapu Koko can really force Abe into some awkward situations. You think Abe will bring Power Sand just to stop Koko? Maybe. But there's a particular philosophy I generally follow when it comes to these games. I believe in teams with heavily obvious offensive and defensive dichotomies over more bounce-based teams. I mentioned that briefly when I talked about the game between the LA Nidokings and the Cincinnati Slifer Reds. For me, Abe is the team with that split, and Aster the more balanced team. Both coaches are above average preppers and planners, but I think that Abe can be creative enough with a mon like Tyranitar, give it a coverage spread that really infuriates Aster, and have the bulk to be able to survive certain hits. But yeah, I just think Abe's playstyle is going to be Aster's, and that's why I picked the Umbreon here. But still, this is one of the toughest games of Week 2 for me to decide between. One game that wasn't difficult for me to decide, however, was the battle between Regulator's Los Angeles Clefable and the Verde's Tampa Bay Frogadiers. So let me start off by saying this. In normal leagues, that is, ones that don't allow mons like Tapu Lele and Aegislash, Landorus Therian is the mon that I will take if I had the number 1 overall pick. Because trying to prep for any possible set that this big cat thing can run is so taxing. It's really difficult to find a single mon that can bottle up all possible Lando sets. And I think it's going to be especially hard for Verde to do it as well. I know he can throw Hidden Power Ice on a few things to maybe check it, but again, checking Landorus Therian is much easier in concept than it is in execution. Greg also has the edge in terms of speed, and that a lot of his checks to Verde's team have higher base speeds than the mons he needs them to check. So Greg will more often than not get the first hit off. One of the examples I can give is how Greg's Celebi outspeeds Verde's Hydreigon by 2 points, so it can throw off a Dazzling Gleam or a U-turn before Hydreigon can attack at all. And I think that's a huge advantage in this game. That's the main reason why Greg is my lock. I mean, maybe Verde can play around by investing less so in speed and more so in bulk, but I think Greg will have a much easier time prepping for Verde in return. And the final game of Week 2 features my boy, Matty Brawlock, coming off a rather dominant win in Week 1, taking on Trev and the Houston Toxpexons, who didn't have a dominant win in Week 1, let's just say. Now, the good news for Trev is that his cooking skills are second to none, and Matty can't handle seeing any food that isn't 100% vegan. So if Trev serves up a spicy grilled cheese like he did last week, I'm sure Matty may be thrown off his game. But still, Matty's team, as an offensive squad, heavily pressures a lot of what Trev can bring. I especially like Azumarill's matchup here. Offensively, Trev has a lot of mons that really crack under a banded play rough or get picked off by an Aqua Jet. I think Maddie can easily EV an Azumarill that will pressure Vitoxapexins. In that case, outmuscling Trev will be enough to take a win here. Also, I'm sort of contractually obligated to take Maddie, as he was the first NPL coach I ever watched videos for, which means I have a much higher opinion of him than I probably should. But that is it for Week 2's Pick'ems. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to leave a like or a comment on the video if you enjoyed. Make sure to check out the links for all of our coaches and analysts in the description. I'm sure they would appreciate it as much as I would. Check out the link for the NPL fan Discord to participate in Pick'ems for next week. And subscribe to the National Pokeball League channel to get more videos from our analyst team, provided we can actually upload them on time. But my name is NoPunIntended. Thank you all so much for watching, and until I see you next time, take care.